gentle hum of an old alarm clock sliced through the silence like a whisper in a cathedral. It was 3:45 a.m., and the world outside still slept blanketed in darkness. Indifferent to the stirring of a woman whose day had already begun, Leah opened her eyes without a groan, without complaint, because she had long since made peace with the hour. The tiredness in her bones wasn't new. It was familiar now, like a heavy coat she never got to take off. She sat up slowly, careful not to let the creak of the mattress wake the two small bodies sleeping soundly in the room next door. Her feet touched the cold wooden floor, toes curling slightly at the chill. On a hook by the door hung her coat, thin and worn, its hem frayed from years of use. On the floor, by the old heater that barely worked, sat her sneakers patched at, the soles with duct tape, the laces knotted to hold them together. They looked ready to give up, but Leah wasn't. She moved through the tiny kitchen, the way only a mother used to moving in silence can. Toast, instant coffee, a splash of canned milk. Her routine was precise, not because she lacked imagination, but because time did not afford her the luxury of anything else. She ate standing up, watching the early black turn to gray outside the window dot at exactly 4 a.m. She slipped out the door, her breath forming soft ghosts in the cold air. The neighborhood was still and dim. Streetlights flickered overhead. Porch lights were out. Leah's steps echoed on cracked pavement. 20 miles, 10 there, 10 back. No shortcuts, no margin for error. She passed the shuttered diner, the gas station that didn't open till 6, the rusted fence where an old dog sometimes barked, but never did her harm. Her pace was steady, determined. Her back ached, her legs protested. A blister on her heel had torn last week, but hadn't healed. She walked anyway. Some cars passed, headlights flashing across her face. None slowed, no one stopped. She never stuck out her thumb. She didn't expect help, never had dot as the town began to stir. Joggers appeared with earbuds and reflective jackets. Buses hissed by on their way to routes she couldn't rely on. Leah kept walking, always forward, always toward St. Mary's dot at the hospital. She clocked him with a nod to the receptionist, who barely looked up, changed into her uniform in silence, gathered her supplies. No one asked how far she'd come. No one noticed the limp in her stride, or the way she winced when bending a mop under beds. To them, she was just Leah, the quiet one, the cleaner, the one who never complained. Dot in the children's wing. She lingered a bit longer, humming softly while wiping down doorknobs. One child smiled at her. She smiled back. It was enough to keep going. During her break, she sipped lukewarm coffee in the corner of the cafeteria. Her phone buzzed. A message from Jaden. "Hope you're having a good day, Mom. I love you." Leah's fingers trembled slightly as she typed back a reply. "I love you too, baby, always." At 3 p.m., she finished her shift, changed back into her faded clothes, and stepped out into the fading light. Her feet throbbed. Her shoulders drooped. But the thought of Aisha's laugh, of Jaden's science experiments laid out on the kitchen table, pushed her forward. The road home was longer somehow, quieter, L-O-N-E-L-I-E-R. And yet, she wasn't entirely alone. Across the street, a police cruiser sat idling under a sycamore tree. Inside, a uniformed officer watched her, not unkindly, not with suspicion, just watching. Leah didn't glance his way. She had seen the car before, more than once now. Always parked, always distant. Part of her wondered if she should be worried. Another part didn't have the energy to care. Her breath fogged the evening air. She pulled her coat tight around her body and kept walking, one step at a time. The cruiser's heater hummed softly, fogging up the lower edges of the windshield as Officer Mark Daniels sat parked under the shadow of the sycamore tree. He didn't know her name, not yet, but he knew her outline, knew the cadence of her stride, the way she wrapped her coat tight around herself just before the wind picked up, the slow favoring of her left foot as she approached the incline outside the bakery on 10th Street. He didn't know why he'd started watching Dot at first. She was just another silhouette in the early morning blur part of the landscape, like the lampposts and silent houses and empty sidewalks. But over the weeks, something about her stuck. A woman walking in the cold at 4 a.m. every single day, without fail, rain or frost, summer or sleet, always alone, always silent, always walking. Dot at first, he told himself it was routine, a patrol habit. He was trained to notice patterns, right? But this wasn't about protocol anymore. This was about a question that had rooted itself deep in his chest and refused to let go. Why was she walking so far, so early, so persistently? And more importantly, why did she never look like she expected anyone to care? Daniel shifted in his seat, his eyes never leaving her shrinking figure. He thought about pulling away, letting it go, but he didn't. Something he couldn't name it yet tightened in his chest every time he saw her disappear into the distance. Maybe it was the way she held herself, not defeated, not defiant, just burdened. That afternoon, while writing up reports at the station, he caught himself staring blankly at his computer screen. His mind kept rewinding to the woman, the shoes, the limp, the silence. He called his wife during his break. "Hey," he said, trying to sound casual, "can I ask you something?" Sarah, always sharper than he gave her credit for, replied immediately, "Who is she?" Mark blinked. "What? The woman? You only sound like this when something gets under your skin." He hesitated. "I've just been seeing this woman lately. She walks every morning, real early, long route, same time, same face. Looks like hell warmed over, but she never misses a day." Sarah didn't laugh. She didn't tease. She simply said, "Maybe she doesn't have a choice." The words sat with him like stones in his pocket. The next morning, Mark made a decision. No more distant watching. He'd speak to her, offer a ride. No pressure, no agenda, just humanity. He waited until she was halfway past Elm Street before, easing the cruiser up beside her, rolling the window down slowly. "Excuse me, ma'am." She stopped, just slightly, her head turned, her face calm but alert. There was no panic, no surprise, just polite caution, like she'd had this interaction before and already knew the lines. "Yes, officer?" Her voice was quiet, but clear, with an edge of exhaustion she didn't try to hide. Mark softened his tone. "I've seen you walking this route a lot. Just wanted to check in. That's quite a distance to walk, especially at this hour. Can I offer you a ride?" The woman hesitated. Her eyes flickered, just for a second, with something unspoken fear. Pride, she smiled, small, practiced. "I appreciate it, officer, but I'm fine. I'm used to it." He nodded slowly. "I understand. Just wanted to make sure you're safe out here. These roads aren't exactly forgiving. I'm careful," she said, her posture already shifting back toward motion. "Have a good morning, you too," he replied, but she was already walking again. The moment ended before it could begin. But now, he was hooked. She wasn't hostile. She wasn't hiding. But she was carrying something deeper than tired feet and early shifts. That evening, Daniel stayed longer on patrol than usual. He parked near the hospital entrance, watching from a distance. Sure enough, hours later, he saw her again, limping now, her uniform shoes stained and sagging, her steps slower, her shoulders sagging. She walked past a dozen cars, past a dozen empty benches. Still, she walked out the next day. Daniel skipped breakfast and followed her entire route. Not close, not obvious, just enough to witness the scope of it. 10 miles, one way, crossing through neighborhoods, under the freeway, past empty fields and construction zones. No one noticed her, not the joggers, not the morning commuters, not even the people sipping lattes on their porches. She was invisible, moving, resolute, disappearing into the noise of the town. At one point, she stopped briefly under a bus shelter, not to wait for a bus, but to shift the duct tape on her shoe. Mark's throat tightened. The next day, he followed her again, and the next until finally, he saw something that made his stomach twist. She reached her street, small houses lined with overgrown lawns, and just before she opened her front gate, 2 children burst out the door. A boy and a girl. They ran to her, arms open. The girl leapt into her arms. The boy laughed and held out a piece of paper, some schoolwork, maybe. Her face transformed. All the weight dropped away in an instant. She smiled, not the polite smile she wore for him or the world, a real one, pure, fierce. Mark sat frozen in his cruiser, watching as the door closed behind them. He thought of his own childhood, his mother's tired eyes, the way she used to sit in the dark counting bills with trembling hands. It hit him like a punch to the ribs. This woman wasn't walking for herself, she was walking for them. And suddenly, just watching wasn't enough anymore. Tomorrow, he'd talk to her again, and this time, he'd really listen. The next morning, Officer Mark Daniels didn't wait in his cruiser. He stood on the sidewalk, coffee in one hand, breath curling into the cold morning air. Street lamps flickered overhead, casting long shadows over the empty road. A silence clung to everything, like the world was holding its breath. He saw her silhouette before he saw her face. Leah, walking that same steady rhythm, shoulders squared against the cold. But something was different today. Her lip was more pronounced. Her coat hung looser, like it had given up trying to keep her warm, and her eyes, once focused forward, unbothered by glances, looked heavier. He didn't step in her path, just waited, held the coffee out gently. "Morning," he said, voice calm. "Didn't want to scare you. I was hoping we could talk. No pressure, just a conversation." She stopped a few paces away, hesitating for the first time since he'd started watching. Her gaze dropped to the coffee, then rose again to meet his. "Officer Daniels, Mark, if that's easier." Leah studied him, her breath shallow but steady. "I don't mean to be rude," she said, voice laced with something that wasn't quite defensiveness but close. "But I really don't have time for friendly chats." "I get it," he said. "I know your shift starts early. I followed you the other day." Her spine stiffened. "I didn't follow you to scare you," he said quickly, "or investigate. I followed you because I couldn't stop thinking about it. 20 miles, rain or shine. I needed to understand." Leah's jaw tightened, her fist clenched. "Are you threatening me?" she asked, voice low. "Because if you think showing up like this and throwing coffee at me means you get to start asking questions about my life." "No," he said firmly. "No threats, no citations. I swear on my badge. I'm not here to accuse. I'm here to listen, just that." For a moment, she didn't move. Then, something in her eyes, weariness, maybe cracked just enough to let a sliver of something else through. "You really followed me the whole way?" He nodded. "And then again the next night?" "Yes." "Why?" "Because you look like my mother did when I was 10. She used to walk 10 miles to clean houses. Never told anyone how hard it was. She just did it. Until the day she collapsed on the kitchen floor and I had to call the ambulance myself. I was 11. Leah's breath caught in her throat. Mark continued, quieter now. "I promised myself that if I ever saw someone carrying that same weight, I'd say something. Try to help before it became an emergency." She looked away, blinking hard. For the first time, her shoulders slumped. "You don't need to help me," she said. "You need to forget you saw me." Mark shook his head. "I can't. I won't." The words hung between them like fog. Leah glanced at her watch, cursed under her breath. "I'll be late," she muttered, starting to walk again. Mark fell into step beside her, not pressing further, just walking. They walked in silence for several blocks, their steps echoing through the empty streets. Then, just before the corner of Bellevue Avenue, Leah spoke. Her voice was hoarse, like it hadn't been used for anything personal in a long time. "My car died 6 months ago," she said. "I kept telling myself I'd get it fixed once I saved up enough. But then the rent went up. Then Jaden needed new shoes. Then Aisha got sick and I had to miss a shift. One thing after another. She didn't stop walking. Neither did he. I looked into buses. But the route doesn't start early enough. Rate a share is too expensive. I asked a neighbor for help once. They said they'd try, but never showed." She paused. "So I started walking." Mark stayed quiet, letting her words fall into the space between them like leaves. "Every mile I walk, I remind myself it's for them, for my kids. Jaden wants to be a scientist. He reads college textbooks from the library and builds circuits out of junk from the garage. Aisha draws portraits of everyone she meets. She's 7 and already better at art than I ever was at anything." Leah smiled softly. Then it vanished. "But they don't know how hard it is. I don't want them to know. I want them to see me standing tall when they wake up. I want them to believe the world is safe, that I'm enough." She stopped at a crossing, waiting for the light. The wind caught her coat, revealing a tear near the hem. Mark noticed the bruising around her ankle, the way she leaned ever so slightly to one side. "You hide it well," he said quietly. "That's the trick," she replied. "The world only helps people who look like they're not drowning." The light turned green. She crossed. Mark stayed where he was for a beat too long, staring after her. It wasn't the limp. It wasn't the miles. It was that sentence. The world only helps people who look like they're not drowning. He'd spent his career watching tides of crime, of traffic, of routine. But this was different. This was the undertow, quiet, constant. lethal dot as she disappeared into the crowd gathering near the hospital entrance. He made a silent vow, tomorrow, she'd walk again, but she wouldn't walk alone, not if he had anything to do with it. Officer Mark Daniels didn't sleep that night. The wind howled outside his bedroom window, rattling the glass like a warning, but it wasn't the weather keeping him up, it was her words. The world only helps people who look like they're not drowning. It wasn't just a line. It was a truth, a terrible, buried truth that cut deeper the more he replayed it. He sat at his kitchen table, legal pad in front of him, pen in hand. The page stared back at him, empty dot. Where do you even start? Helping her wasn't a matter of protocol. There was no section in the department manual titled what to do when a single mom walks 20 miles in silence. But he didn't need a manual. He needed people. He tapped his pen. One name came to mind. Mike Ruff. No nonsense, owned auto repair shop by the train tracks. They weren't friends exactly, but they'd shared coffee over wreck reports and engine breakdowns more than once. He picked up the phone. Mike answered, voice gravel and oil stain yours. You alive? Barely. Listen, I need a favor. A quiet one. Daniels told him about the car, the woman, the miles. Mike didn't speak for a long beat. Then, bring it in. I'll look at it. No charge. You haven't even seen it. Doesn't matter. Sounds like she's been driving herself harder than that engine ever did. Daniel swallowed a lump in his throat. Thanks, Mike. That's what communities are for, right? That sentence hit Daniels harder than expected. Dot over the next 48 hours, something began to stir. Daniels didn't post it on Facebook. Didn't write a press release. He made quiet calls, whispered requests. One by one, people listened. The owner of the shoe store downtown promised a new pair of walking shoes. The grocer on Maple agreed to donate gift cards under one condition: she never finds out it was me. Even the bank manager, usually a man with a heart colder than his marble desk, offered to discreetly open a no-fee account for any funds raised. But Daniels didn't stop at help. He wanted change. He reached out to St. Mary's Hospital under the guise of routine patrol cooperation. During a casual hallway chat with the head of HR, he steered the conversation. Got any transportation programs for employees who work overnight? He asked, sipping bad coffee. The HR rep blinked. Not really. We tried a shuttle pilot once, but it got scrapped. Pity, Daniel said, eyes fixed on the hallway. Seems like a place that saves lives ought to make sure it's owned. People get here in one piece. Later that evening, Daniel sat in his cruiser, watching the hospital staff file out into the evening dusk. Nurses, janitors, orderlies' faces blurring under parking lot lights. Among them, Leah emerged. She didn't limp tonight. She staggered. He could tell she was trying to hide it. Her walk was slightly stiffer, her jaw tighter, but he could see it in the way she paused at every third street lamp just for a moment, like her legs might not carry her the rest of the way. Still, she kept going. Daniels didn't approach her. Not yet. Instead, he drove home with fire in his blood. The next morning, he walked into the police station earlier than anyone else. On the whiteboard in the break room, he pinned up a sign-up sheet, carpool support, for the ones who never ask. Officer Daniels left no name beside it, no details, just a phone number at the bottom and one note. We're not doing this because she needs saving. We're doing it because she deserves rest. By the time Daniels returned after patrol that afternoon, 5 officers had already signed up. Meanwhile, at the hospital, a nurse named Emily overheard the orderlies talking in the staff kitchen. Did you hear about Leah? She walks 10 miles one way every single day. Doesn't take the bus. Doesn't drive. Just walks. No way. That can't be true. It is. My cousin saw a cop following her a few mornings ago. Thought she was being investigated. Turns out he was making sure she got home safe. That night, a donation box appeared in the hospital break room with a handwritten label for Leah. For the miles Emily dropped in the first bill, $20. The next morning, there was $127 and change in crumpled bills. The town was waking up. But Daniels knew what was coming. With every step forward, the stakes grew. The more people who got involved, the higher the risk that someone would say something, spill too early, break the unspoken vow to protect Leah's dignity. He needed to act fast. The surprise couldn't wait much longer. The car, now in Mike's garage, was nearly done. New battery, new brakes, a fresh coat of soft silver blue paint. The shoes were boxed, waiting under the counter. The hospital had agreed quietly to review its transportation policies, but red tape would take time. Daniel stood in the garage one evening, staring at the vehicle, keys dangling from a hook. He thought of her faceline with effort, lit with fierce maternal fire. He imagined her reaction, the silence, the disbelief, maybe even the resistance. She didn't want handouts. He knew that. But this wasn't a handout. It was a mirror held up to a town that had finally realized it had been looking away. He called Sarah, his wife. "I think we're ready," he said. "You're going to tell her?" "No, I'm going to invite her to the garage. Tell her Mike found something she needs to see." Sarah paused. "You think she'll come?" "She'll come," Daniel said. "She won't want to, but she'll come because she's walked too far alone to turn back now." He hung up and stared at the car, shining like hope under fluorescent lights. In 2 days, the surprise would unfold. But until then, the secret had to hold. Because the most powerful thing wasn't the gift. It was the moment a woman who thought no one saw her would finally be shown she was never invisible at all. Not to him, not to them, not anymore. The morning of the reveal, the town held its breath. In the heart of the garage, under humming fluorescent lights and the scent of engine oil and fresh paint, something sacred was about to unfold. But for Leah, still trudging through her long shift at St. Mary's, unaware of what was coming, it was just another day, another mop, another bedpan, another smile that hurt the whole. Mark Daniels stood inside Mike's auto, his badge tucked inside his coat pocket. Today, he wasn't here as a cop. Today, he was a man honoring a vow. He watched as people gathered quietly, not in a grand parade, not with media or fanfare, just quiet faces. From every corner of the town, people who had once passed Leah without a word. Now, they were here. Emily from the hospital, the grocer from Maple Street, Mike wiping grease from his hands. Even Officer Martinez, who once called Daniels to sentimental, stood near the garage door holding a sign that read in bold block letters, "No one walks alone here." A soft drizzle pattered on the windows outside. Inside, the silver blue car sparkled like a secret the town was aching to tell. At 10:47 a.m., Daniel's phone buzzed. Text from Sarah, "She's on the way. Ashes with her, Jaden too." Daniels nodded, his heart thudding like a drum in his chest. Across town, Leah was confused. The message had come unexpectedly. Mike from the garage, saying they'd found something on her old vehicle and needed her to come in person. She'd hesitated. She didn't have time for wild goose chases. But something in Mike's voice, and the fact that Officer Daniels had texted her the address again with a simple "just trust me," that made her pause. So she bundled Aisha into a jacket, told Jaden to grab his sketchbook, and walked not the full 20 miles this time. A fellow officer had quietly offered a ride. Even that felt strange, like the world had shifted just a few inches to the left. When she arrived and stepped out of the car, she immediately froze. Dozens of people stood in the drizzle, turning to look at her now with pity, with something else, something deeper. Respect. Recognition. Daniels stepped forward, smiling gently. "Leah," he said. "Welcome." She looked around, eyes narrowing in confusion. "What is this?" Mike pushed a button and the garage door began to rise. The room behind it exploded in color and light balloons, tied to rafters, signs with her name, children waving. But in the center of it all was her car. Reborn. Gone was the rust. Gone was the broken bumper, the shattered mirror, the bald tires. This was the same car, but not the same at all. It was whole, clean, strong, ready, just like she had always been. Leah's knees buckled slightly. She caught the side of the doorway, her hand trembling. "I don't understand," she whispered. Mark stepped beside her. "You walked for them," he said softly, nodding toward her children. "For miles, for months, for years, and the whole time, we looked away, but not anymore." Aisha tugged at her hand. "Mommy, it's our car." Jaden ran ahead, inspecting the tires, his eyes wide. "Is this real?" Leah didn't answer. She was crying now, silently, fully. Mike approached, placing the keys in her palm, without ceremony. "She's all yours. New battery, new tires. Fluids topped off, oil changed. Even threw in a new heater, saw that old one was fried. Shouldn't have taken us this long to notice." Leah couldn't speak. Behind her, someone began clapping, then another, then all of them. The sound built not thunderous, but steady, like a heartbeat, like footsteps, like her walk, echoed back by people finally willing to walk beside her. Daniels leaned in. This isn't charity, Leah. This is a thank you for showing us what strength really looks like. She looked up at him, her eyes red, but blazing. I never asked for this, she said. No. He nodded. That's what makes it powerful. A tall man stepped forward from the back. Leah didn't recognize him at first, but as he handed her a folded piece of paper, he smiled warmly. I'm from the community college, he said. We heard about your son's science projects. Consider this an invitation. There's a scholarship seat with his name on it when the time comes. Jaden stared, slack-jawed. Leah nearly collapsed. Emily hugged her. The grocer handed her a fresh box of groceries. The woman from the shoe store offered a bag inside. A pair of walking shoes. Durable, padded, just in case. Not because she'd need to walk anymore, but because they wanted her to walk differently. Now not alone, not unnoticed. Leah stood there, surrounded by the town that had once ignored her. She took a deep breath, then stepped forward. I walked because I thought I had no other option, she said, voice cracking but clear. I walked because I had no car, no ride, no choice. But I also walked because I wanted my kids to believe in possibility, even if it was only 1 mile at a time. She paused, scanning the crowd. I never expected this. I never asked for it. But I promise you this kindness, I'll carry it, and I'll pass it on. Daniel swallowed a lump in his throat. Asha tugged her coat again. Can we go for a drive? Mommy. Leah smiled. A real, full smile. Yeah, baby, let's go for a drive. As she got behind the wheel, Jaden climbing in beside her and Asha buckling herself in the back, Leah ran her fingers along the steering wheel. Her hands shook. For the first time in months, they weren't from fatigue. They were from relief. From hope. From being seen. And as the car pulled out of the garage, honking once with joy, the town cheered not for the car, but for the woman who had walked alone until one day, someone followed her and finally saw why. Tomorrow, Daniels knew the road would be different, because now Leah didn't walk it. Now she led it. The road where Leah used to walk alone was quiet now, not silent, changed. The cracks in the pavement were still there, the same flickering streetlights, the same crooked mailbox she once passed every morning at 4:17 a.m. But now, people stood outside. Some waved, some helped a neighbor carry groceries. Some simply looked up from their phones to see each other. Leah hadn't walked that road in months, not like she used to, not with blisters, not with exhaustion, but she still passed it, almost every morning, in her now reliable silver blue car. And each time she did, she slowed down at the old sycamore where Officer Daniels used to park, not to reminisce, not out of nostalgia. But to remember where it all began. That morning, though, her drive was interrupted by a phone call from Mark. Leah, he said, voice brisk. I've got a situation. It's not urgent, but you might want to come. She was already turning the car around. What kind of situation? A family, he said. Young mother, 2 kids. Something in her voice when I spoke to her, it sounded like you. 10 minutes later, Leah stepped into a small, rundown bungalow near the edge of town. The paint was peeling. The lawn was yellowed. Inside, a toddler cried from behind a closed door, while a woman sat on the couch with her head in her hands. Leah moved gently, like someone who lived this scene before, because she had. Hi, she said, crouching beside the woman. I'm Leah. I came because someone once came for me. The woman looked up, startled. Her mascara had run. Her eyes were hollow. I don't need pity, she whispered. Good, Leah said gently, because I didn't bring any. I brought possibilities. The woman broke and cried. By noon, that woman's fridge had food. Her toddlers had diapers. And for the first time in weeks, she had someone who sat next to her in silence, without judgment. Daniel stood outside on the porch, watching through the window. He shook his head, smiling. You're a force now, Leah. She looked back at him. No, I'm just proof that one act of noticing can change everything. The next week, the Neighbors in Need initiative launched from the community center. The mission was simple. No one in this town walks alone. They set up a hotline, a website, a volunteer directory, and within 90 days, they had helped 37 families. The grocery store offered monthly food kits. The tech repair guy refurbished laptops. For students, local churches opened shuttle routes for single mothers. And Daniels, once a man who measured worth in incident reports, began measuring his days and lives. Quietly shifted. The program didn't just grow. It transformed the entire culture of the town. You could feel it in the classrooms, where teachers stayed an extra hour to help struggling kids. In the barber shop, where a sign now read, "Pay what you can. Sit like you matter." Even in the city council meetings, where discussions once about budgets turned into real conversations about dignity. And at the center of it all was Leah, not on stage, not with a microphone, but sitting at folding tables, holding the hands of women who reminded her of who she once was. One afternoon, Daniels called her to meet him at the park. When she arrived, she saw him standing next to someone she didn't recognize, a girl, maybe 19, with callous hands and a sunburned face. Her arms clutched a folder to her chest. She didn't speak. "This is Amanda," Mark said. "She's been walking to job interviews 3 miles each way." Her neighbor called it in, said she never asked for help. Leah stepped forward and offered a smile. "Do you have somewhere to be right now?" Amanda shook her head. "Good," Leah said, "because I think I have a few ideas. Over the next week." Amanda got a ride, then an interview, then a job, then a donated car courtesy of Mike, who said, gruffly, "Tell her to treat it better." Then the last guy did. Amanda wept, but it wasn't from sadness. It was from the stunning weight of finally being seen. By the time spring bloomed, Leah's name had become shorthand in town for transformation, not because she was a savior, but because she had once suffered in silence and used her scars as stepping stones for others. On the 1-year anniversary of the day the garage door rose, the town held an event. No stage, no ribbon. Just a long wooden bench placed beneath the sycamore tree where Mark once sat in his cruiser. A plaque was bolted to the wood. "One step at a time," for Leah and everyone we used to overlook. Daniel stood beside her as the crowd clapped gently. Leah looked out at the faces. Some she knew, most she didn't. And then she did something unexpected. She turned to the children in the crowd. "Raise your hand if you've ever seen your mom or dad come home tired," she said. Dozens of hands lifted. "Now keep them up if you've ever thought maybe they needed a little help, but didn't know how to give it." The hands stayed raised. Leah smiled, not sadly, proudly. "That's okay," she said, "because now you do. You look, you ask, you offer, and if they say no, you stay close anyway." Quiet help is still help. The applause this time wasn't loud. It was full, thick with tears, real with recognition. Later, as Daniels and Leah sat quietly on that bench, he asked, "Do you ever miss the walk?" She thought for a long time. "I don't miss the pain," she said, "but I do miss the silence. It was the only time I felt like I was still me." Daniels nodded. "You're still you. You're just not invisible anymore." She chuckled. "I used to think being invisible was power, that no one could hurt me if no one saw me. And now I know. Power is when they see you and they stand beside you anyway." Daniels looked out across the town. Shops, streets, children, laughter. A town once fractured by silence, now humming with soft revolutions. He glanced at Leah one more time. She didn't need to walk anymore, but she had never stopped moving people, and that, he thought, was the greatest journey of all.